Hi, we are joining you today from the Disability Equity Office within Equity, Civil Rights, and Title IX. Today, we're going to be talking to you about defining and determining reasonableness. What is a reasonable accommodation?
A reasonable accommodation is any modification or adjustment to a job, the work environment, or even the application process. Accommodations enable applicants or employees with disabilities to participate in the application process or to perform essential job functions. Accommodations also enable employees to participate in the benefits and services of being an employee, similar to that of their colleagues.
What is considered reasonable?
A modification or adjustment is reasonable if it seems reasonable on its face and is plausible. An accommodation must also be effective in meeting the needs of the individual. So, in the context of job performance, this means that a reasonable accommodation enables the individual to perform the essential functions of the position. The employee often knows what accommodations are going to work best because they know and understand the barriers presented by their disability the best. The employer is familiar with the systems, policies, and practices in place within the organization. In the end, it's the employer who decides what accommodation is put into place, but that accommodation must effectively address the functional limitations presented by the disability.
How is an accommodation determined to be reasonable?
Sometimes it's easier to define what constitutes an unreasonable accommodation. Generally, there are only three ways in which we would find an accommodation unreasonable. If it would impose an undue burden, if it would pose a direct threat to health or safety, or if it would require the modification of essential functions of the job or the fundamental requirements of a program. An assessment of reasonableness will likely include discussions with the employee's unit, HR representatives, and possibly other stakeholders as well.
What are unreasonable accommodation requests?
Generally, unreasonable accommodation requests can fall into two categories. The first is an accommodation that poses an undue hardship or burden to the unit, which can greatly hinder the department's ability to function or to fulfill operations. For example, a faculty member requests not to teach courses in the morning due to symptom exacerbation related to a disability. However, the course schedule for a group of students in a designated degree pathway has a very structured schedule that requires this prerequisite to be taught in the mornings. This could cause an undue hardship because if the course was unable to be taught, it could delay graduation terms for the students. The second category of unreasonable requests is if an accommodation removes essential job functions from the position. Accommodations generally cannot entail the removal of essential job functions, which are typically identified within the job description. For example, a security employee is seeking breaks for a set period of time during specific hours of the day. This accommodation would require the removal of an essential job function, as the employee would not be able to attend to unanticipated emergency circumstances that may arise during those additional set break times.
What if the request is not determined to be reasonable?
If an accommodation is determined to be unreasonable, the employee and the employer should explore equally effective alternatives with an accessibility specialist. Equally effective is a term used to describe alternative accommodations than those that may have been preferred by the employee, but that do not cause undue hardship or burden. The alternatives still must meet the needs of the employee with a disability, and the identified alternative should also meet the employer's operational needs. For example, an employee requests an accommodation for a private office to improve their focus because they experience auditory and visual distractions in their current workspace. This could be an unreasonable request because the unit does not have private offices and only has access to cubicles. However, an equally effective alternative could be that the unit provides the employee with noise canceling headphones to help reduce auditory distractions, as well as a door with frosted glass to minimize the visual distractions in the cubicle workspace. And we can stop the recording.